We live overseas. Our entire financial system is still in the United States, which means every payment, every transfer, and every bill has to work across two different financial systems.
Hi, I'm Scott.
And I'm Liza.
If you've been thinking about spending some time overseas, or you're doing it now, managing money in different countries is something that takes a little bit of time to figure out. We've been traveling full-time in Europe for the last 6 months now.
We kept our financial base in the US. We figured out how to pay things day to day, how to move money between currencies, and how to stay on top of our taxes.
Everything we share is from our own personal experience. We are not financial advisors or tax professionals, so please take what's useful and reach out to your own advisor for your own situation.
When we sold our house, we put the proceeds into a Charles Schwab brokerage account and a Charles Schwab money market checking account. And we chose Charles Schwab because of how well they work internationally.
Yeah, they have lots of ATMs without any ATM fees, and their online software is very easy to use from anywhere.
Our retirement accounts, our 401ks, our Roth IRAs, and our pensions are at Fidelity, and we're just leaving those there. We're not doing anything with that. And we also opened up backup checking and savings accounts with Capital One because they were offering a high yield interest rate for savings. So it made a lot of sense for us to have backup funds in there while they're still growing.
Yeah, and that's our US base. All of our money is in US dollars.
Day to day, we use our credit cards to pay for everything.
We would tap to pay, and that is very prominent around here. I would say Google Wallet, Apple Pay, using your watch is something that everybody uses.
We choose to use a credit card and allow them to do the conversion for us. You get a better rate that way.
Yeah, if you see on the cash register for you to choose US dollars, they're already converting it for you.
And not at a very good rate. So be sure to choose the local currency wherever you are. For moving money, we use Wise. We opened an account when we were in the US. We weren't sure how or if we were even going to need it, but it turns out we have been using Wise, not to hold our funds for us, but to use it as a transfer mechanism. So we transfer from our US dollars through Wise to our Revolut account that we opened up while we were here in France.
Yeah, we find that when we move money to Wise, we're not waiting for our money ever. It's almost instantaneous. You always tell me it's there already.
Yeah, it's immediate. And we don't move large amounts of money. It's about $1,000 a month. And we only do it when the rate looks good. And that allows us to have funds available to us that we've already received at a decent rate.
Right. And we're only moving it when the rate's low, when we feel like we need to. And so we're always watching that rate, so that way we're never down to the wire of needing money and having to pay that large exchange rate when it comes. And by doing all these small little transfers, it really helps us in that factor.
Another way that we focus on earning money with the money that we already have is when we are selling our stocks or refunding ourselves, we utilize that money market account at Charles Schwab to hold what we need. It also has a high yield interest rate. We're always making sure that all of our money is growing somewhere, somehow. Many European systems, they run on an IBAN system to pay for bills like rent or utilities. And so we had to figure out how we were going to fit into that financial system. And the solution for us was opening a Revolut account, which we did not do until we were here in France. And it worked out for us that way because by being in France and using an address of one of our Airbnbs, they GPSed our location and we were given a French IBAN. So that resolved our need to have the European IBAN that would help us with our financial system.
We are tracking all of our money using spreadsheets, of course, and also a cool travel app that we use called Travel Spend. And you're able to export all your data out of that and put it into another spreadsheet, which, Liza loves so much. Everything we purchase here is on a credit card. It's tap, pay, you're done. It's basically that simple most of the time. The cards that we use the most are our Chase Sapphire Preferred card and our Capital One Venture X card. Those are the ones that give us the most points. And they also have no foreign transaction fees, which is very important when you're traveling overseas.
We do have some cards that we've kept from before that do charge the foreign transaction fee, but we just make sure to only use those when we're in the United States. We've also found that Visa and MasterCard are basically accepted everywhere. It's American Express that we've noticed not so much. It's pretty much a hit or miss.
You'll be able to use your American Express card in hotels and restaurants, but any of those mom and pop shops and maybe a farmer's market, you won't have the luck there.
So before you leave the United States, we would suggest setting up a PIN for your credit cards. It's not very often that it's required, but in the United States, the credit cards are chip signature, and all over the world, practically, and not in the United States, it's chip and PIN. And so you may, for some occasions, maybe a kiosk buying a ticket for travel at the train station, maybe ask for a PIN. You might not, but it's still a possibility. So it's a simple thing that you can take care of while you're still in the US. Make sure you assign a PIN to all of your credit cards. You also want to be sure to add your cards to either Apple Pay or Google Wallet.
Yep, because you're going to use tap to pay here all the time, and everybody's always putting their little watches up onto the transceiver to pay, and it's pretty easy and convenient, no doubt, but you want to set those up before and get comfortable before you start traveling.
Everything here we found is tap to pay, and it's so convenient to not have to have credit cards in your wallet and carrying them around everywhere.
Yeah, and I'd also advise you to set up your banking apps for that exact same reason. You want to do that in the States so that way you're officially logged in and you're able to do text messaging with your bank. And
you want to be sure to use credit cards over debit cards because they offer more security on your purchases. So the debit cards, save that for an ATM withdrawal.
Yeah, and we're always going to use our Charles Schwab ATM because that has no fees.
And as far as travel notices, it's not really required anymore by your credit cards. They basically just track every charge that you make. So you need to be sure to have your contact info updated, if nothing else, so that they can reach you in case they flag a charge. When we arrived in Europe, we exchanged 500 US dollars for 410 euro. And after 6 months, it's almost gone. But most of it was used when we were visiting Christmas markets, not on everyday spend.
Yeah, on everyday spending, you're not going to use cash at all. We could even go weeks without spending any cash. The only example that we really kind of have is small little mom and pop shops or like a farmer's market. And there was this one time that we went into a boulangerie and they had a credit card limit where they don't allow you to use credit cards unless you spend a certain amount. And we were just trying to buy 2 croissants. So we ended up paying cash that day. So for the most part, you won't even be using cash.
When we do need cash again, we're just going to be sure to use our Charles Schwab checking debit card.
Of course.
We would never use a credit card at an ATM to withdraw cash and get a cash advance. Those interest rates are ridiculous. And on top of that, they charge you a fee.
Yeah, even on top of the fee.
You also won't need to exchange your currency before you leave the country. Wait until you arrive here and don't use those airports. Those airport cash exchange programs that they have.
They're a
They
rip-off.
just, major ripoff. Just wait until you arrive where you're going and find an ATM. Those rates are way better than what anything you're going to get at an airport or exchanging your cash before you leave the United States.
That way you're not fumbling around with a big wad of cash in your wallet and worrying about, like, I have so much money on me. Just take it out when you need it.
And always, always, always choose the currency of the country that you're in. Never choose the United States amount. That dynamic currency conversion is another ripoff. It's already including not only fees, but a high rate that you won't get if you just choose the local currency and let your bank at home take care of the exchange rate for you.
You're going to be very tempted to do it because it's going to show you the US dollar amount right on there. And it looks super convenient, but don't do it. Choose euro.
Or whatever country you're in. Cards get declined abroad, and it's usually not a very big deal. You purchase something in another country, the bank flags it, they contact you and let you know, you let them know that it was you, and they unlock it. And usually that process is pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we have multiple cards. We have that backup system so that way we're never stuck in a tight spot. We have Chase, we have a Capital One, and we have our Charles. Different banks, And then we have different networks, right? We have the Visa and the MasterCard.
And we also have Amex.
Right. If we ever really get stuck.
The worst case scenario would be if the card gets canceled outright and the bank, some of them, will offer to ship it to you overseas. But that's going to take long. And then you need to have another alternative way of paying for things while you wait for that card.
Yeah, they might say it takes a couple of days, but the way that we're seeing mail work over here, it's definitely going to take longer than that.
So you want to make sure that your contact info is always updated with all of your banking needs, which is what we make sure we're doing at all times.
And what we do whenever we're using any of our banking applications, we use a virtual private network. Now we're using NordVPN, which secures our line for any time that we're transferring any kind of funds or if we're checking even balances. Because when you're traveling, you're going to be going over multiple Wi-Fi networks or even just over cellular networks. And you want to make sure that that connection is secure and no bad actors can get into any of your data.
All declines, they're not all fraud. Sometimes it's just another safety measure that your credit card has. And we experienced that recently when we were going on a train trip for the day where we didn't really know what time we wanted to come back. So we only purchased the ticket getting there. And when we were ready to leave, we were at the train station trying to purchase the return and our Chase Sapphire Preferred just wouldn't go through. And we didn't really understand why, but we used our Capital One Venture X, got on the train and made it back, no problem. So on our next journey, we were wondering, what caused that? So we used the same card, Chase Sapphire Preferred. We bought our outgoing trip. And when we were ready to come back, we made a point of being on Wi-Fi and purchasing our return trip that way. And it went through just fine. So we imagine that Chase Sapphire Preferred just felt a lot safer accepting our double charge on the same day because we were on Wi-Fi. So you never know.
Right. And it could have been because we were in a different city. So it now thinks that it's moving around. And is this really fraudulent? And it's just being flagged. And by having that second card, it gave us the time to get right onto our scheduled
we made
train.
The train.
Yeah. The backups are always great just to have for a backup.
Every country has its own payment system. We're going to use France as an example because that's where we are. The U.S. economy, they run on credit cards. In France, they run on bank-to-bank networks. To pay for almost anything important here in France, you need a banking account IBAN number, IBAN. The infrastructure they use here is called SEPA, S-E-P-A, and that's Single Euro Payments Area. That is what we recognize as very similar to ACH in the United States, Automated Clearinghouse, where in the United States, they ask you for a routing number and your account number, and that's how they can access and deposit or withdraw funds from your account. Here, they ask you for the IBAN number.
Right. So you might be used to setting up maybe your utility or your cell phone to do an auto pay every single month with your credit card. Here, they're going to use your IBAN number and it has no processing fee for them.
For us to be able to participate in the French system, we needed a French IBAN. And we were able to resolve this by opening an account at Revolut. We did this while we were in France. And the way that worked for us was we were in our first Airbnb and we opened up 2 individual accounts, which is what you need to do first. And then we opened up a joint account. And that saved us so much time. We didn't have to try and find a bank that would even open an account for us. We didn't have to make appointments, do the paperwork, and
waiting. Didn't have to wait. Everything was in our own living room. It was great.
And the government uses the system, IBAN, to even reimburse you for your medical expenses. So when we were applying for CPAM, we needed that French IBAN and we had it. And now we have a French IBAN for anything that might come up that we need.
The U.S. taxes on citizenship, not where you live. So we will be filing our taxes with the U.S. like we do every single year. But because we are technically French residents this year with our VLS-TS visa, we will also be filing a French tax return to declare our worldwide income.
The U.S. France tax treaty provides direction on who has the primary right to tax you on certain income, and it also provides the mechanisms to avoid double taxation. There are 2 key tools used by Americans abroad: the foreign tax credit and the foreign earned income exclusion. The foreign earned income exclusion allows qualifying Americans to exclude a certain amount of income that is foreign based that they made while they were living in France. And the foreign tax credit provides a dollar for dollar credit on your U.S. tax return for any taxes that you paid to France. And in a high tax country like France, that often eliminates your U.S. tax liability altogether. There's also a requirement as a U.S. citizen, if you have $10,000 or more in foreign financial accounts, not just one, even if it's
Anywhere.
multiple, and it's $10,000 or more within that year, you need to file an FBAR, FBAR. It's not a tax, it's just a filing requirement. You want to be sure to do that. A few examples of how the United States and France tax treaty works for Americans that are living abroad is for 401k IRA withdrawals. These are generally taxable only in the United States under the treaty. You declare them in France, but France is going to give you a tax credit for the amount that you paid to the United States, effectively making you exempt from that. It's counting it as French income tax. Roth IRA withdrawals are qualified withdrawals for tax in the US, so you don't pay taxes in the United States. However, it's very important that you still report the withdrawal on your French tax return. Investment gains. As a French resident, this gain is generally taxable in France, often at that flat rate of 30%, which is 12.8 for income tax and 17.2 for the social charges. This is just our understanding of how the system works. We just wanted to share what we believe we learned. It's not tax advice in any which way or form, and we hope it's helpful.
Okay, now with all of that said, keeping all of our finances in the US, using credit cards that worked internationally, and being able to move money between currencies while learning how local systems worked was all it really took.
Once you see how it all fits together, it really isn't that complicated. And you just really need to figure out how these systems work outside of the United States.
Hopefully, this gives you a clearer picture of what managing money abroad really looks like.
If you want to see the exact cards and accounts that we use, the ones that save us money on fees and work reliably overseas, we've put them all in one place on our website. The link, you can find it in our description.
What is the one thing about managing money overseas that you are most unsure about? We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.